The Kiel Canal, the busiest artificial waterway in the world. Up to 30,000 ships transit the nearly 100-kilometer-long canal each year.
You have to maneuver very precisely. Even a small error will result in an accident.
Every passage is a race against time for the canal helmsmen and pilots.
Time is money, and that's obviously of interest to the ship owners.
The locks are over a century old, engineering masterpieces, but also the Achilles heel of the canal.
Even minor disruptions can result in waiting times at the locks in excess of 10 hours.
Which is why the canal is now being made fit for the shipping traffic of the future. Work on an additional lock chamber in Brunsbüttel is in full swing. It's one of the largest hydrological engineering projects in Europe.
It's a unique building site, a landmark construction project.
Early morning, start of work at the lock in Brunsbüttel. A major concreting job is scheduled for today. The ferry is in continuous operation. It brings workers, heavy equipment, and all the building materials needed to the vast construction site in the middle of the lock island. Construction supervisor Jerome Morgenthal has a long shift ahead of him. He's responsible for coordinating the different trades and is in charge of the construction schedule.
Morning.
Morning.
How many mixers do you have?
4.
A mistake mixing the concrete would be disastrous.
So we're where we want to be. Okay. When you can tell from the outset that the concrete isn't the right consistency, that is, it's either too stiff or too runny, and you have to ditch the first vehicle, you start getting nervous because time is slowly running out.
The increasing number of ever larger ships is pushing the Kiel Canal to the limits of its capacity, which is why they're building at the western entrance near Brunsbüttel. A new lock chamber is being constructed. The effect of the tides, the island location, and the problematic soil conditions make the new construction a huge logistical challenge. Every few minutes, the mixers transport the freshly mixed concrete from the specially set up double mixing plant to the construction pit, 400 meters away.
Today's the day we've been working toward for months, so everything has to go right. Nothing can go wrong today.
The mixing supervisors are under extreme pressure. The tension in the concrete laboratory is palpable. The pouring cannot begin until the testers have given the green light. The concrete must later be able to withstand long-term exposure to the brackish Elbe water. The slump flow test should provide clarity. It involves measuring the diameter of the sample. The clattering test is also an important indicator.
We determine the consistency because it's a good indication of whether it contains the right amount of water, whether everything's okay with the mixture.
The concrete could have liquefied during transport.
The target consistency in this case is 460 plus or minus 30 millimeters.
We have 480 now. If it isn't just right, we can't pour it.
The mixture is good. The concrete is being used to create what the engineers call the inner head wall, the interface between the canal and lock.
We're now pouring approximately 3,050 cubic meters of concrete for this section. We previously installed a total of 560 tons of reinforcing steel. I'll probably never do anything like this again. Something on this scale is a one-of-a-kind building site, a landmark.
2 small and 2 large lock chambers in Brunsbüttel serve as the western gateway to the Kiel Canal. Up to 30,000 ships transit the German waterway annually. That's 10,000 more than the Suez Canal. The old lock system is in urgent need of renovation. The 310-meter-long and 42-meter-wide chambers have been in continuous use since 1914. In the future, The fifth chamber is intended to serve as a bypass, to relieve the rundown structures and allow them to be renovated. The island location between the existing chambers presents a logistical challenge, however. The St. Johannes ferry is being used exclusively to serve the building site. It transports cargo weighing up to 180 tons from the bank to the lock island. Civil engineer Jerome Morgenthal has specialized in hydraulic engineering. He's been working on the Brunsbüttel site as construction supervisor since 2018. His area of responsibility: everything involving reinforced concrete.
We're now heading down around 19 meters to the first level, then we'll go a bit lower. We'll then be roughly 21 meters deep and can observe the concrete being poured.
Arrival at the so-called gate chamber, the sliding gates garage, as it were. This is where the 21-meter-high steel structure will later be retracted. Because the lock is still operating in parallel to the construction work, vibrations have to be minimized. Around 90 cubic meters of concrete are pumped into the ground per hour to build the massive foundation of the chamber.
If everything goes smoothly, we should be finished in 34 to 36 hours.
Short briefing with the foreman.
Yeah, it's going pretty well.
At 27, Jerome is one of the youngest construction supervisors.
I've seen it happen quite a few times that young apprentices become the bosses later on. You learn to rise above it.
Workers compact the concrete with a needle vibrator. The vibration displaces the air. But a sudden leak causes problems.
We have a slight leak from the adjacent construction pit. It's not good for the concrete as it's being washed away.
They need to act quickly in order to stay on schedule. The construction supervisor and his team search for a solution with the help of the hydraulic engineer.
It isn't ideal, but it happens. We're pretty deep here after all. And right next to us is a massive head of water.
The Kiel Canal is there, and over there is the neighboring construction pit for the lock chamber, and next to it, the large locks that are filled with water too. So basically, we have the worst possible conditions for a deep excavation like this.
The water can be pumped out, and the concreting continues. Work on the new lock chamber began in 2014, and the first ships are due to pass through the lock at the end of 2026. The Kiel Canal connects the Elbe at Brunsbüttel with the Kiel Fjord. It saves ships having to make the on average 450-kilometer-long detour around the Danish Jutland Peninsula. The Elbsailer is one of the regulars in the canal. The cargo ship uses the waterway on its journey from Hamburg to Scandinavia. The dockhands moor the arriving ships. They have to be quick and have their eyes everywhere. Above all, they have to understand how the ships maneuver and know which mooring lines go over which bollards. One wrong move can have fatal consequences.
What makes it dangerous is that the mooring lines have extremely high braking loads. If a ship puts too much strain on them, they can break, and they snap back like rubber bands. And if a dockhand is standing in the way, he can be severely injured or even killed. Obviously, we want to avoid that happening.
The ships are raised or lowered by up to 2 meters. Locks are necessary because depending on the tide, the water level in the Elbe can be above or below that of the Kiel Canal. The procedure takes up to 45 minutes. New personnel boards the ship at Brunsbüttel. Start of duty for pilot Matthias Hagener and canal helmsman Thomas Müller and Michael Kerps.
Good morning. Buenos dias, senor. Good morning, Captain. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, Captain. Good morning, Captain.
Captain Rolandas Matutis receives assistance. Because the waterway is so narrow and winding, there are specially trained canal helmsmen for the Kiel Canal.
So, Captain, she is left-handed or she's right-handed?
She is actually left-handed,
Yes.
but have right-handed effect. So
Okay.
the bows go to starboard.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And we have 7.9 by the way.
I will just contact the traffic control.
An important piece of information.
If we had a draft of 8 meters, we'd have to wait for smaller vessels in the areas designated for traffic group 3. With just 7.9 meters, as in our case, we can transit the canal and pass smaller vessels without having to pull over for them.
In the middle of the lock site sits the heart of the Kiel Canal, the Vessel Traffic Service Center, or VTSC for short. Shipping throughout the canal is coordinated from here. The traffic routing controllers are on duty day and night throughout the year.
Copy that, Sailor. Good morning and welcome back.
Roger, good morning. We have a draft of 7.9 meters. I just wanted to ask if you've already registered this or if you still have 8 meters in the system.
Negative. We already have 7.9 meters in the system. We already took a look. My next question, are you ready to get underway right away or are there any delays?
No, we're ready to sail. We're just waiting for the gate to open fully, then we can set off.
Slowly but surely, the roughly 1,500-ton sliding gate opens.
Okay, we start now departing from the lock into the canal.
Thank you.
There are some sailing yachts like that one, which just don't take care about nothing. They have own rules and all regulations by their own, so.
Around 12,000 recreational craft transit the canal each year. The shallow water means that maneuverability is limited.
You have to be vigilant, of course, but we do this regularly. They're pretty much routine maneuvers. Okay, we're completely out of the lock. Now the canal helmsman can take over once the captain transfers control.
Sofern der Kapitän umstellt. Captain, can we change the control for steering to the helmsman?
Canal helmsman is an occupation found nowhere else in Germany. Thomas Müller has been helming large ships on Germany's waterways for 15 years.
When we take over the helm, we always test how fast or slow the vessel responds to rudder input, and then we immediately know how it will behave. Once you have that worked out, it's routine after that.
The 158-meter-long Elbsailor belongs to the second largest traffic group in the canal. She gradually leaves the inland port in Brunsbüttel behind her. Matthias Hagener now advises the captain. He's one of approximately 280 freelance pilots.
I've personally sailed over 2,000 ships back and forth here, so I'm very familiar with the vessel type. For us pilots, it's a bit like a home away from home.
A home with a panoramic view. Almost 100 kilometers now lie ahead of the crew. Estimated transit time, 8 hours, at least.
The faster the ships transit the canal, the greater the profit. As the saying goes, time is money, which is obviously of interest to the ship owner.
A maximum speed limit of 15 kilometers per hour applies in the canal. The Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, as it was known at the time, was opened in 1895, after just 8 years of construction. It involved around 9,000 workers excavating 80 million cubic meters of earth. An engineering masterpiece. 2 massive lock chambers were constructed at each end of the canal. In the early years, the canal was primarily used by the German Reich for military purposes. Engineering marvel and industrial monument, the railway bridge in Rendsburg is supported by 51 steel pillars. The workers built from both sides at the same time, without any safety equipment, 140 meters above the ground. Another impressive steel construction, the Hochdon Viaduct. It lies on the route of the Marschbahn, a mainline railroad in Schleswig-Holstein. With a total length of around 2,200 meters, it's Germany's 4th longest railroad bridge. In the region of 5 million rivets and over 14,000 tons of steel were used in its construction. The span over the canal is 143 meters long. The railway bridge has been in service since 1920. To ensure that it remains safe for trains to cross, it's regularly painted with corrosion protection. A total of 10 bridges span the Kiel Canal. All are designed with a vertical clearance of 42 meters. Pilots have been employed on the Kiel Canal since its opening. IAS data and radar imaging help to navigate in challenging areas.
This shows me exactly how far I am from the bank. Not in absolute numbers, but relatively. Am I closer on the starboard side than on port? So even if it's foggy, I can tell whether I'm in the middle of the channel or closer to starboard, where I have to head if there's oncoming traffic.
Every half hour, a broadcast call is transmitted by the Vessel Traffic Service Center over the radio.
The traffic situation eastbound, 2 times traffic group 5. Express Elba over 10,006 meters and 80. And Elpsen has already passed at 11:31.
Those are massive encounters.
The VTS operators know at all times exactly where every ship in the canal is.
A large part of our job is implementing the decisions of the VTS. And the primary goal is always to minimize waiting times and guide traffic flows past one another in a sensible way.
The red car transporter is a regular visitor to the canal. In the past 15 years, the average size of the ships being piloted has doubled. This presents new challenges. Absolute concentration. Pilot Matthias Hagener indicates the course changes while communicating with the canal helmsman.
We'll reduce a little.
They're considered oncoming traffic too. 16 ferries traverse the Kiel Canal. Passengers and vehicles can ride them for free. This arrangement dates back to an imperial decree that's still in force today. The first electrically powered ferries have been in operation since 2021. They have space for up to 8 cars and a load carrying capacity of 45 tons. They make the crossing as needed. The new pollution-free ferry, Arlau, traverses the canal at a speed of 13 kilometers per hour. In the past, it was 8 kilometers per hour. Ferryman Thomas Vodracik must constantly keep an eye on the current traffic situation.
So ships and recreational craft coming from the left or right, that is from Brunsbüttel or Kiel, have priority. Because we're crossing the canal, we're obliged to wait for them.
After nearly 75 years in service, the old ferry was due for retirement. The new ferry is fitted with a multitude of cameras intended to increase safety. The high-tech, environmentally friendly replacement cost around 8 million euros. It even features an innovative mooring system, an extendable hook that grabs the jetty. This allows the motors to be switched off when waiting, thus saving energy.
Everything here is highly automated. On the old ferries, it's all done using ropes and pulleys. Everything's a bit more nostalgic on them.
The battery is charged 4 times a day. The power is provided by an onboard diesel generator. When the battery charge level drops to 40%, it starts up automatically and charges it back up to 80%. The long-term plan is to modernize the entire fleet of ferries on the canal. The Hohenhörn Viaduct, constructed in 1989. It's the tallest structure on the route of the A23 Autobahn and offers panoramic views of the Kiel Canal. Even without ship-to-ship meeting, each transit of the Kiel Canal involves making around 231 course changes, totaling 693 degrees. Navigating by sight, Due to the fact that in its first year of operation, almost 1 in 20 ships had an accident, it was made compulsory for large vessels to have a canal helmsman on board. Pilot Matthias Hagener has to constantly adjust to new crews from different countries. Captain Rolandas Matutis comes from Lithuania.
German seamen have probably become too expensive. It's noticeable that a lot of German shipping companies don't employ as many German crew members anymore. And being a follow-on career, we pilots naturally worry about the next generation too.
More flexible entry requirements are intended to alleviate the situation. Since 2022, it has been possible to train as a pilot without a master's license or prior seagoing experience. Matthias Hagener has himself sailed the world as a ship's master. His skills will soon be put to the test. A large convoy of ships is waiting for the Elbsailor in the Fischerhütte passing place.
There are 5 large vessels. They need all the space they can get to maneuver. That's really the highlight, so to speak, of this particular passage.
All of the ships in the canal are divided into traffic groups from 1 to 6 based on their length, breadth, draft, and cargo. When added up, they result in a meeting number, which mustn't exceed 8. The Vessel Traffic Service Center decides who has to wait and who is allowed to proceed.
We'll just reduce speed and pass in the middle.
The canal is 134 meters wide at this passing place, making it significantly wider than the rest of the stretch. Because of this, several large ships can pass each other here, irrespective of the meeting number.
The moment we enter the passing place, they get a green light and are allowed to get underway again. The green and the large green one to our right have drafts that mean they can transit the canal at 15 kilometers per hour, whereas the 2 to our left, to port, have drafts that mean they're only allowed to transit the canal at 12 kilometers per hour, which is why they were kind enough to let the other ships go first.
Yeah, we are lucky now. The pilot told that they are waiting for us now.
Even the smallest lapse of attention could have disastrous consequences. The Elbsailor maneuvers through the narrow corridor at reduced speed. The physical interactions between the ships can lead to a dangerous suction effect. It takes a lot of skill and experience to counter it. The overtaking maneuver saves the crew of the Elbsailor valuable time.
At least 1.5 hours. Yes, Captain, I think so.
About, yeah?
1 Stunde, 1,5 Stunden.
It's good.
The meeting was precisely scheduled in advance by the VTSC. For this, the VTS controllers use a distance time diagram, which shows which ship is traveling at what speed, where it will be, and when. The Elbsailor has safely mastered the overtaking maneuver. But the passage is long. The crew have another 60 kilometers of canal ahead of them. The aging locks are the Achilles heel of the Kiel Canal. If they don't work perfectly, all the shipping on the canal is affected. Up to 80 ships, from container ship to giant cruise liner, transit the German waterway each day. Entering the canal takes a delicate touch. The almost 47-meter-long and 9-meter-wide sliding gates seal the large chambers and initiate the lock procedure. The water level is equalized via culverts deep inside the lock structure. Today, there's work waiting in one of them for Master Mechanical Engineer Mirko Korte.
This machine room is from 1912. The gear wheels and everything here date from that time. It requires constant maintenance, but it's impressive that it's survived for over 100 years and still works.
The water flow is regulated using sluice gates. They close off the culverts similar to gate valves. The steel plate and the rails beneath it are subject to constantly changing water levels.
After 100 years, it's not surprising that it's rusted away and now it needs replacing. The sluice gate isn't being guided properly anymore and could get stuck. And at some point, the mechanism stops working.
One of the sluice gates has to be removed. The maintenance job requires the use of specialists. Divers first seal the culvert from the outside with plates to prevent water entering the circulation channels from the large lock chamber later on.
So where are we now?
We're at 7 tons now.
Give me the next spindle.
The next spindle, please.
Absolute teamwork.
The spindle's at the waterline. Slacken the lines. They're slack.
Constant communication is crucial.
We can't see a thing underwater. We do everything by touch. You naturally have to have good spatial awareness and knowledge of the structure.
Only one of the 2 large lock chambers in Brunsbüttel is in service while the divers are working. The longer the maintenance work takes, the higher the likelihood of ships backing up at the entrance to the lock. The entire team is under extreme time pressure. The diver has resurfaced. Will he give the anticipated green light?
We were successful. The sluice gate is attached. I'm satisfied.
Retrieval can begin. Despite the good preparation, the success of the operation remains uncertain.
I'll be worried if it gets stuck. That could happen. But it's okay at the moment.
The gear wheels slowly start turning. The ancient mechanism is due to be replaced by a state-of-the-art electro-hydraulic system. The sluice gate must be removed as carefully as possible. They have to avoid damaging the vulnerable lock infrastructure at all costs. The roughly 10-ton sluice gate can now be transported away.
It's been in place for around 5 years, and I'm optimistic that it won't need a complete overhaul, just a good clean, and then we can install it again.
This saves tens of thousands of euros.
We can get the lock up and running again so it can be used tonight.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, we're off. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
The team is finished on schedule. The large lock chamber is now again open to shipping. The Elbsailor continues its journey along the canal. It's transporting 654 TEUs to Scandinavia. The cargo ship belonging to a shipping company from Lower Saxony enters the passing place. It has to give way to 2 oncoming ships.
He's pleased that we're already there and he can just continue. The second one is a bit further away, so we'll have to wait another quarter of an hour for him. He'll pass us as well. The challenge now is to kill time here.
Just don't lose control now. Wind and pressure fields generated by the slowly passing ship make the maneuver trickier. Pilot Matthias Hagener has to counteract the undesirable bank effects. While the Elbsailor waits in the passing place or siding, the ship's propellers keep turning, generating residual thrust. They bridge the time spent waiting without the use of an anchor.
It's actually rather unusual for the captains, but perfectly normal for us. I'm familiar with the characteristics of this ship or vessel type and adapt accordingly. If the ship doesn't immediately respond as I expect or want, I have to do what's necessary to make it.
The container ship Expressway is forced to take a break too. There's a total of 12 passing places or sidings along the length of the canal. The pilot and canal helmsman wait for the second ship. The distance to the ship in front must be maintained exactly. Something appears on the horizon.
Der Gegner,
The rival,
der ist
as we
da.
call them, has now arrived.
Wir können jetzt auch
So we can get underway again too.
Das ist übrigens
That's the Erwin Schulte, by the way,
von den Schiffen, die
one of the ships that can be a bit
immer ein
obstinate
bisschen
at times.
störrisch sind. Also die sind
It handles completely differently to
ganz
this
anders zu
container ship, for
handhaben als
instance.
jetzt dieses Containerschiff zum Beispiel.
Matthias Hagener has piloted the tanker before, so he knows the characteristics of the vessel type.
Die haben auch nicht so ein gutes
They don't have such a good rudder
und,
and need
brauchen
far more time to enter a
viel
passing
mehr
place and
Zeit,
safely come to a stop.
so eine Weiche reinzufahren und sicher auch dort anzuhalten. Da muss man sehr viel
You
früher
have to start reducing speed much earlier,
die Geschwindigkeit zu reduzieren.
although you wouldn't think so just by looking at
Obwohl man
it.
das im Schiff eigentlich gar nicht ansieht.
It's actually a challenge to
Aber es ist ein
handle.
unbequemer Kandidat.
Slowly but surely, the Elbsailor and Erwin Schulte pass one another. Captain Rolandas Matutis uses the transit to take care of paperwork. He works for 4 months on the ship and then has 4 months off, always in rotation. At the moment, he's transiting the canal on an almost weekly basis.
Yeah, it was 2002, 20 years ago exactly. First time I was entering this canal.
Even though the pilot calls the shots in the Kiel Canal, the captain still bears the responsibility.
Normally all captains to the cabin and finish doing some jobs, some rest, that's not on the bridge. But I prefer always to be here on the bridge for me, just one way in the middle. We change pilot, just another way you can go for 3 hours schlafen.
The Rüstebergen pilot station is located roughly in the middle of the canal at kilometer 55. This is where the personnel switch over. Pilot Christoph Bodman waits for his next job. He's already piloted one ship to the station. Soon he will board the Elbsailor and head back to Kiel-Holtenau.
In this case, we board the ship while it's in motion. We don't have much time to prepare ashore before departing. You have to be on the ball immediately. But there are a lot of ships that are here on a regular basis, so we're actually pretty familiar with many of them.
The pilots work on a freelance basis and are organized into 2 brotherhoods. A pilot launch takes them from the pilot station to the ships, at any time of day or night. The timing has to be perfect. The switchover involves a long climb. Boarding the ship via the swinging rope ladder is not for the faint of heart. Thanks to the switchover, every pilot ends up back where they started at the end of their shift.
I reckon I'll get a ship heading the other way in the next hour, so I should be back in Brunsbüttel sometime in the early evening.
Am frühen Abend wieder in Brunsbüttel.
Morning.
Hey, how you doing?
Morning.
The handover. Pilot Matthias Hagener quickly briefs his colleague Christoph Bodman.
Wir können den anderen hinterher.
You can follow the other one. Up to 5 with the lever here. It's a 6 rever. Bow thruster needs a minute to start, otherwise everything's fine.
Auf Kombinator noch mehr. Okay. Aber ansonsten alles Chico. Gut.
All right, have a safe trip back.
Dann gute Reise, ne?
Hallo, Captain. Ja, gute Heimreise. Captain und Sir.
Matthias Hagener now takes the launch back to the pilot station. The Elbsailor has now been in the canal for roughly 4 hours. Today, the new pilot, Christoph Bodman, is accompanied on the bridge by a trainee. Trainee pilot Frank Escher is being permitted, under supervision, to navigate a large ship through the Kiel Canal for the first time.
I sailed around the world as a captain for a few years, and now I have the opportunity to take on a new challenge and actively contribute to the safety of shipping in our local region. And I should get to spend a bit more time with the family, too. Those were the main reasons, actually.
We have a really large number of ships transiting the Kiel Canal nowadays, with a correspondingly high demand for personnel. We're currently understaffed and need to recruit a large number of captains that we can train to be pilots. One of the 10 trainees in a group is now accompanying me, and his task is to control the speed. He's concentrating on that now.
Shift change for the canal helmsman as well. As opposed to the pilots, they remain on board the entire time and swap every few hours.
The ships here can be up to 230 meters in length. I think this ship is 150 meters long and can have a maximum draft of 9.5 meters. You have to steer very precisely. Even a small error will result in an accident. That is, the ship will run aground. And then we'll be unable to maneuver. And we don't want that to happen.
Around 120 accidents occur each year on the canal, mostly without serious consequences or personal injuries. Even the Elbsailor has had to be rescued in the past.
But they were stuck somewhere. I forgot the place where, somewhere in that direction. Just stop the engine and finish. You cannot do nothing. You cannot drop. You can drop anchor, but for nothing. Anchor is nothing here. You can damage the vessel, but here, if you soft landing, so it's okay.
The Rendsburger Viaduct. Ship's railroad and transporter bridge make it a unique transport hub. Opened in 1913, the structure consists of over 17,000 tons of steel and is an impressive sight. Behind it is the ship welcome station. The national anthem of Antigua and Barbuda, under whose flag the Elbsailor sails. Every ship is given a musical welcome here.
This is the most what I remember always. Summertime is always plenty people there, so plenty people and plenty campers, plenty good mood.
The Rendsburger Viaduct ranks among the outstanding industrial monuments in Germany, not least due to its transporter bridge. There are only 8 in operation worldwide. It ferries over 1,000 people across the canal each day. January 8th, 2016. A black day in the history of the canal. Early in the morning, the freighter Everett Pram collides with the transporter bridge. 2 people are injured. The over a century-old Rendsburger landmark. A total loss. The repair attempt fails. 6 years after the collision, the replacement transporter bridge finally arrives at the Kiel Canal by barge. It's equipped with the latest technology and has space for 4 cars and 100 passengers. Construction time, 3 years. Cost, 13 million euros. Mounting it below the viaduct is especially challenging. For those responsible, the replacement construction represents uncharted territory.
We put in quite a few hours during the planning phase.
And we spent a lot of time discussing and drafting the assembly concept too. It's very, very thick.
With the help of 2 telescopic cranes, the 44-ton Traveler is mounted below the bridge. Then it's time for the equally heavy ferry platform. The traffic continues flowing both above and below. Special precautions need to be taken when trains and ships cross. Hanging and balancing the 12-wire rope is complicated.
These are the tricky moments when you think to yourself, did I do everything right? Every project is like that. Here in Rendsburg, it was certainly a bit of a challenge because it's not the sort of thing you do every day. It's kind of a one-off construction project, but we're in the fortunate position of being given this opportunity.
The old transporter bridge had been in service since 1913. An industrial monument, affectionately referred to by the Rendsburgers as the Iron Lady. Constructing an exact replica of the original was a mammoth task for the experienced engineer and his team.
It ought to look like the old one in every way, but modern. That was the main challenge we faced, and it required a bit more ingenuity than other projects.
The transporter bridge takes less energy to operate than a normal ferry. To ensure that an accident like this does not happen again, the new transporter bridge is equipped with more sophisticated safety systems than its predecessor.
Here we have the radar. You can see the ship there. It's in the canal and approaching the transporter bridge. This here is the 1 kilometer line. As soon as the ship enters this zone, we get an acoustic warning and this target enter notice appears. Essentially, we receive a warning that a ship is approaching. This is all controlled by the radar system.
To further enhance safety, it's also been equipped with an emergency operation mode. The trial run in early 2022. In the future, trained ferry operators will safely navigate the transporter bridge across the canal.
Yeah, so we'd like to do a test.
Okay, understood. The next two are coming about 12:40.
Okay, got it.
Before departure, the ferry operator must answer control questions. Only then is the control lever activated. Powered by 4 electric motors, the ferry floats away 3 meters above the water. It takes 1.5 minutes to complete the 125-meter crossing. 4 suspension cables and 8 diagonal cables connect the gondola to the traveler hanging beneath the bridge.
My first time at the controls today. You can't really imagine how much technology is installed until you see it, and there's 2 of everything.
At the end of the day, it's the ferry operator who's ultimately responsible for his ferry. The same as when you're driving a car, the driver is responsible for his vehicle. It doesn't matter how many safety systems are installed, he's the one who bears the responsibility.
The new transporter bridge once again assumed regular service in the spring of 2022. The Kiel Canal is considered one of the most challenging pilotage areas in the world. Around 85 million tons of cargo are transported on the artificial waterway each year. The eastern section between Rendsburg and Kiel is particularly narrow and winding.
We have to calculate how many minutes we need to get there.
8 intensive months packed with theory and practice still lie ahead of Frank Escher. As an experienced captain, he's familiar with the operational procedures aboard a ship.
It's initially quite a transition from being the master of a ship that you get to know intimately over time to now having to quickly adapt to many different vessel types and sizes.
The eastern section of the canal has not been enlarged since its construction in 1914. The canal bed is just 44 meters wide. In order to reduce bottlenecks, the minimum navigable width is currently being increased to 70 meters. This involves excavating the canal embankment over a distance of 11 kilometers. Around 7 million cubic meters of earth need to be removed. The tight curves are also being flattened. Constructed in 1894, the Levensau Viaduct is the oldest bridge across the Kiel Canal and one of the biggest choke points.
When you see how narrow it is under the bridge and that it lies on a curve, you can imagine how it can get a bit tight for the ships at times.
In order to protect the structure, ship-to-ship meetings have been stopped. The consequence? Delays. The dilapidated bridge is due to be replaced by a new structure. The paddle steamer Freya, the steel sidewheeler built in 1905 and based in Kiel, is setting out for a canal tour. Always something new on the Kiel Canal. Exotic visitors have to be piloted through the canal now and then too. The German submarine U-35 uses the waterway on its way to a foreign mission.
Shall I ask if the captain will allow you to moor up in the lock? It would be good practice.
Traffic increases on the approach to the lock in Kiel-Holtenau. Only 2 of the 4 lock chambers are currently in service. Commercial shipping and recreational craft have to share them.
Even minor disruptions can quickly result in waiting times at the locks in excess of 10 hours. This means that the time saved by taking the shortcut through the Kiel Canal is quickly lost. This is a great pity, of course, because it induces ships to take the long way around again, which results in increased fuel consumption and thus environmental pollution.
Not only that, if the canal and its technical infrastructure doesn't work, the freelance pilots will have no income. The biggest lock chambers are in need of renovation and susceptible to accidents. In 2018, the cargo ship Acacia broke through one of the lock gates. Divers take part in the complicated damage assessment. At over 1,000 tons, the sliding gate weighs more than 200 bull elephants. It has to be sawn into 2 parts in order to remove it. Lock operation is disrupted for weeks. There's no replacement gate at the keel lock for a period of 2 years because both of the spares have been damaged due to collisions. Repairing them is complicated. Because the lock gates are over 100 years old, the workers often have to resort to ancient construction drawings. Rainer Mischke is in charge of the lock operation in Kiel Canal. The first-come, first-served principle applies here.
The first thing we try to do is to lock the ships out of the canal because it's a confined waterway. This is necessary to ensure safety and ease navigation. When it comes to ships entering from outside, that is from the Kiel Fjord, they're locked through based on their arrival time at the roadstead. The 2 now arriving from the west, Express and Elbsailer, they both need their own lock chamber due to their size.
Once safely berthed in the lock, the pilot's job is finished. The Elbsailer must contact the lockmasters in good time. The lock controllers try to fit as many ships in the lock chambers as possible, or as they say, to stuff ships.
Reception, Kiel Canal 4.
Kiel Canal 4, Elbsailer.
Okay, thank you. All right, have a good day. Bye.
Timing and speed must be precisely coordinated when entering the lock chamber.
Half a meter, parallel, all good.
A battle against the forces and a premiere for the aspiring pilot. Frank Escher has to counteract the strong hydrodynamic suction effects acting on the Elbsailer. Done.
You could feel how the wind came a bit from port and pushed us over a little. So get the ship alongside first. 3 knots was a good entry speed. Nice maneuver anyway.
They arrive exactly according to plan.
I'm very happy. The time is excellent. We don't need to now to press the full ahead and finish tomorrow morning next port. Finish.
Bye, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Good voyage. See you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks all, Captain.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
It's the end of a long day for the canal helmsman and pilot.
Finished. Right, I'm going to head home on my bike. I live right behind the bridge there. It's just a 5-minute ride.
In less than 24 hours, they'll be back on duty, ensuring the safety of the shipping in the Kiel Canal. Threading a giant ship through the eye of a needle, the Elbsailer's journey from one sea to another comes to an end. Her journey on the busiest artificial waterway in the world took barely 8 hours. The captain was assisted by pilots who switched off halfway along the route. Ships are becoming ever larger and the fairway narrower. The canal has been enlarged 3 times over the course of its history, and it's in a race to modernize in pace with the shipbuilders. Several thousand people rely on the Kiel Canal for their livelihoods. It's also an outstanding industrial heritage site. The German waterway is one of Northern Europe's main transport arteries and a major construction site. Billions need to be invested to ensure that the canal continues to serve its purpose in the future too, offering an attractive shortcut between the North and Baltic seas. After just 20 minutes, the locking procedure at the exit has been completed, and the Elbsailer can continue on its journey to Scandinavia. Thanks to the shortcut through the Kiel Canal, she saved around 320 nautical miles, which equates to a passage time of 11 hours. It's likely that on its return journey, the container ship will once again visit the Kiel Canal, the busiest artificial waterway in the world.